Hey, what's going on, champs? I'm Aaron Deliosa. Welcome to an Immigrant's Life podcast, my podcast about immigrants and immigration and everything in between. Thank you for listening and downloading the show, and thank you for supporting my dad.
Welcome back, Immigrant Nation. Another week, another new episode. As always, every week, I want to start this episode with gratitude. And what I mean by that is I want to thank you for your continued support, no matter how small or big it is. If it means sharing an episode online or by telling your family and friends about the podcast. And of course, the most important thing, subscribing to the podcast. I really appreciate it, as you are the reason why I'm continuing this project. Also, if you want to reach out, please check my social media accounts at An Immigrant's Life on Facebook and Instagram. You can also email me at animmigrantslife@yahoo.com if you want to come on the podcast, or if you know someone that wants to be a guest on the podcast. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Now, let's talk about the episode. This week's episode is a story of survival and redemption through the power of art. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode, so let me cut to the chase. Without further ado, let's get into the show. Isa, dalawa, tatlo. Today's guest is a visual artist and an activist. He absorbs energy from his culture and he dedicates his life to his community. Everyone, please welcome David Young Kim.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing, man? Thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking me on here.
Oh, of course, it's a pleasure. When I saw your artwork there that you actually, shout out to Christian Kabuay. I saw he posted your artwork. I'm like, yo, that is cool. And I need to talk to this cool guy.
Yeah, Christian's awesome. Yeah, he definitely helped me out.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Before we get into deep, why don't you tell the Immigrant Nation where they can reach you, or if you want to promote anything?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's probably my most updated social media. It's at Dave Young Kim. And then I have a collective that I co-founded, and that's KAA Collective, Korean American Artist Collective on Instagram at KAA Collective.
I saw that. What do you mean by collective?
Collective, it's a little bit hard to define, and we're actually trying to figure it out ourselves, what the relationship is between working artists, actually. So we're all working artists. We're all our commonalities. We're all Korean American active artists, practicing artists, and yeah, it's as someone who's leading the project, it's a little bit hard to figure out how to most effectively get artists together and think about what kind of projects we have to do and things like that. But yeah, we're basically a community of artists trying to do things together with a common mission and common goal. So yeah, the different projects, we're promoting each other, helping each other, yeah.
I like it. But do you guys collaborate too?
Yeah, we've collaborated in the past. We did a project called the Chung Project, and Chung is like this Korean concept of like, it's hard to explain as many concepts are into like American culture, but it's like a feeling of love or feeling of closeness to somebody. It's not romantic though. It's like it's relational. It's between unrelated people. It could be with related people, but it's not romantic though, that's for sure.
It's platonic love.
Yeah, it's platonic love. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Platonic is probably the closest way to put it. But yeah, after the massacres in Atlanta, we got I think it's about 25 Korean American women and non-binary artists, and we launched a project, a portfolio. Each person wrote an essay or a poem, or if they're visual, they submitted a visual piece. And then we bound it into this folder, and then we wrapped it in like a traditional Korean cloth called pojagi, and so that was like a actual like collaborative project that we issued out. Yeah, so we've done things like that. Yeah, it is very powerful. Yeah, It was a response to a tragedy and Asian hate, and yeah, it was very powerful. I helped organize it, but I didn't. Obviously, I'm not a woman or non-binary, so I didn't participate personally. But yeah,
I mean, you're still an artist. You can still say something through your art.
yeah. But it was specifically to because the victims were all women, Asian American women. So we thought it was most appropriate that Asian American women respond to it. So yeah, but I was happy to help organize it and put it together, and definitely be in the background.
Hells yeah, man. Hey, somebody has to make sure the project's going.
Yeah. That's definitely running this collective. Yeah, it's the behind the scenes is definitely essential. So yeah.
Definitely. So I did some background on you. Originally from LA, but now lives in Oakland. Before you
No, I
moved.
actually moved back to. Sorry, I should clarify. I actually moved back to LA now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How so?
Just like 4 years ago, I moved back because my family's still here, and
Okay.
I have the kids and everything now. So different. I'm older, different stage in life. Want to be closer to the family. Wanted to help out my parents. Different. Different priorities. Oakland was fun, but I lived in the Bay all my adult life. So I've never lived back in LA as an adult until now. Because I
Wow.
left at 17 after high school.
How do you find LA now?
Well, it's that question's always hard because I was a teenager back then. I was getting in trouble. It was a whole different even like even if the city didn't change, the aspects that I was interested in as a teenager were different, right? So, but now I'm an adult. The things that interest me, actually, I'm not even I don't even go to the things that interest me because I have kids. So it's mostly about the kids. So, right. So it's not even about me, first of all, it's about the kids. And second of all, the city's changed so much on top of that. So it's a very difficult question to answer because it's just so many things, just perspective. I'm older, my priorities are different, the city itself is different. It's 17 and for like almost 30 years later, right? So it's crazy. Yeah, no, not 30, but like 25 years later. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
But I like it. LA's cool. I live by the beach now, so I lived in the hood in like, I shouldn't call it the hood, but it was a very active neighborhood in West Oakland when we had our first kid. And we were very sort of intentional about being there. Lots of activity, drugs and shootings and stuff, and now we live by the beach. So definitely a change of scenery too, Yeah.
Hey, man, once those kids comes up, man, you gotta find some peace and safety.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's that too. Total different change of scenery as well. So yeah.
You mentioned that you got in trouble when you were younger. Let's get into that. I heard you got into a Filipino gang.
Yeah, Jeplocks. You know Jeplock?
I know the word.
Yeah, the word. Yeah, that's what I mean.
But I
Yeah.
don't know what the gang is. I kind of read a little bit about it because of you. But how can a Korean man get into a Filipino gang?
Well, it's actually very common in LA. A lot of Filipinos and Koreans kind of, similar circumstances led us to America, US sort of colonial situation and, imperial situation kind of ultimately led our families to move here, immigrate here, roughly around the same time. Filipinos a little bit sooner than us. I mean, Filipinos have a long history in America, but the more recent massive influx was very similar to Koreans. And then, I think we settled in the same sort of neighborhoods in LA, and we crossed paths a lot and sort of similar, maybe social economic background. So, and I think because Filipinos were here a little bit before us, they're facing the same challenges as us, but they've, which is like violence, it's still LA was like gang capitals. It was the height of gangs in the 90s. So you're a minority, you're not Mexican, you're not you're not Latino, you're not white, so you don't fit anywhere. You're trying to assimilate. You're latchkey because your parents are busy trying to settle in, right? And so you get punked all the time. So you take on the culture of LA and you form your gangs, and that's what the Filipinos did. And then we came just a little bit after, and the Filipinos kind of bore the brunt of it and started the gang. So we joined the Filipino gangs. It was almost too natural,
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it happens. There's a lot of Koreans and Filipino gangs at the time. There were Korean gangs also. But yeah, I'm very familiar with Filipinos because I grew up with so many of them. It's so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's LA. LA's like that. It was a melting pot, and it's all true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you get. We had a lot of Mexicans in Jeff Fox too.
Really?
Mexicans, yeah. So
When I read this, I'm like, how? Like, cause me, thinking like, okay, it's a Filipino gang. It has to be just Filipinos, like the other, no one's going in.
yeah, I mean it's majority Filipinos. It started out Filipino, like majority Filipino, but yeah, if you go back another generation before myself, it would be almost 100% Filipino, or maybe like 80%. There's still a lot of Latinos actually the generation before, but and then when you come to my generation, it's like 50% Filipino and like a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Koreans. Uh,
Really?
yeah, if you go to the Valley, which is north of LA, yeah, we had Armenians, black dudes, uh, like a little couple of white dudes. It was very, very diverse. Again, it's like it was there in the perfect moment, in a perfect situation. Gangs are all about belonging. So
Mm.
um, it becomes your pseudo family, and your pseudo point of power and protection and ability to fight back, ability to stand up for yourself. And so um, if you're an outlier in the world and you're looking for that, you need that, then you're welcome in essentially, right? So so if you're white or black and you're getting punked out there, and you happen to live in this neighborhood or go to high school with a bunch of Jeff Rocks, and you'll probably join Jeff Rocks, to find that belonging. Yeah.
Definitely. So, how do you join in?
I mean, different ways. I think some people get forced in. I think mostly you have a relationship. I mean, there are lots of ways, but like there used to be like a tagging crew, like little junior high kids. They used to kind of hang out with us, and then when there's like when they elevate to high school, they because there's a relationship and they're older now, and they want to get a little bit more serious about the streets, then we bring them in. Me, I went to elementary school with a lot of the guys who ended up joining in high school, and so at this point, I didn't live in LA. I lived in a suburb of LA, but I uh, kept in touch with them, and I came to LA every weekend. And so, yeah, through that relationship, my old friends from elementary school started hanging out with the guys in the neighborhood. We call it the neighborhood. And one day we were just hanging out, and one guy just socks me in the face, and then they all jump me. They all jump me. Yeah, we're in someone's backyard, and then before I know it, I'm in, and then yeah, we go out looking for some sort of rivals. Right then, they threw me in the trunk, and I'm like sick because I'm so beat up, and because there's no room in the car, and I'm like the lowest on the totem pole at that point. So they're like, just go in the trunk. I'm just rolling around like I'm gonna puke, and then it's a little bit. The details are a little bit hazy, but yeah. And then later we go to a bowling alley that's in our neighborhood, and then they burn me with a cigarette, and yeah, I think that's basically how it happened. Yeah. So it's a little bit of time, a little bit of hanging out, and then you hang out enough, you're like, all right, we're gonna bring this guy in.
Did you know the time that you're gonna get jumped?
I did not. No, we were just hanging out, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, up
What
from the
happened?
side, some guy just punches me like on my face, across my face.
Oh.
And then all the guys, they probably planned it,
Mhm.
but I had no idea because I've hung out with them before.
Mhm.
So I just thought we were just hanging out again, right? But yeah, there's no permission. There's no asking for, you know, there's no asking. There's no formality to it. The
Mhm.
formality is the violence, the jump in.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in the Philippines, and unfortunately, grew up in like a a rough neighborhood too, and there was like gangs, like street gangs in my area too, and that's what they do too. They jump them.
They just jump you in, you know? Yeah, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah. I never join in because it's not my thing, you know.
yeah.
And it's most of the main guys are my cousins, so they don't let me go in.
Okay. So yeah, you're lucky you had familial protection.
Exactly, So they always say like, "Hey, no, 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 you stay in school. We got you."
Well, that's good because sometimes, a lot of times family is how you get in, but you had protective family, so that's actually great.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, they choose you. Like if they knew you're a troublemaker, they'll let you in. But if they knew
Oh,
you're like, this guy is like, he's like a school guy, kind of like no
you
one
had
touches me.
potential. You have
Exactly.
potential. You could do well for yourself and succeed in life. They're like, we don't want to ruin his life, right?
Exactly. That's how it
Yeah, yeah,
was.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I could pretty much do whatever I want and be friends with everyone. I try to be friends with even the other gangs, but God forbid something happens to me, those guys are coming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. So you got the benefit of them, but you didn't have to join.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
You don't have to tell me like details, but what kind of troubles did you get into? Did you have to do like what crimes?
yeah. Well, that's a good question because it's funny because I was actually just at a funeral for one of the guys this
Oh.
weekend, and so I saw a bunch of those guys, and I only kept in touch with a handful of them. So it was very interesting seeing a bunch of guys I didn't keep in touch with who I remember from the time, and there was a bunch of youngsters too that I never met before. They
Mm.
still look like gangsters. They walked in with shaved heads and lokes and baggy clothes, and I was like, who are these? Who is this gang that just walked in? Because we're all old now, and we don't look anything like that anymore. Um, and it turned out they were like the newest generation that they weren't
Mm.
active, but they just still looked like that. But even when I was talking to the guys my generation, they were still talking about the cases they were catching and trying to dodge like jail and stuff. Just it followed them all this time in life,
Wow.
um talking about some of our old friends who are still locked up for life and like
Mm.
kind of doing bad like mentally and stuff. But so I was lucky because my parents moved me to, like I said, to a suburb of LA. So as a teenager, it was hard to get to LA, like the mid city, like middle of LA,
Mm.
LA proper. Um, but I would go every weekend because my parents have business there, and eventually, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. I was like, at 15, I was like, let's go. Like, I already took my driver's test, as soon as I could get my driver's license, I wanted to just be in LA to be in the mix. The suburb was so comparatively boring, and as a teenager, so it was like white and like so there's nothing going on, nothing dangerous, nothing that got my adrenaline going, felt exciting. Um, so I think what that did was it kept me out of trouble essentially. I mean, I had it like I never shot anyone.
Mm.
Let's just say that. But we did everything that you can think of. Basically,
Mm.
those guys are doing it all. But I think I was very fortunate. I think if my parents didn't move me to the suburb, then I could have easily gotten killed or locked up the same. But just because I was there only 25% of the time, I didn't do anything. I mean, I did a lot of graffiti. We had a neighborhood. If as soon as you enter certain streets, like our graffiti's everywhere. So you go, oh, I'm clearly entering, JFX neighborhood. Like this is their turf. So I do a lot of graffiti, got in a couple fights, got arrested for stupid stuff, trying to rob people and stuff like that.
Oh my
Um, I had a gun, but I never,
God.
yeah, it's a little bit tricky to talk about also because um, those guys, like I said, they're actively dealing with that stuff. So,
No, I
um,
don't want you to get in trouble, obviously. I was
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
I
But
was just asking. But are you
yeah.
still a member? Do you get out, or can you even get out?
Yeah, you could get jumped out. Some guys got jumped out, but I guess it's sort of defunct. So you're sort of in it for life at this point. Like you went
Mm.
to the college and you're alumni now. So you're like part of it forever, You're an
Yeah, yeah.
alum, you went to that school, so you're in it unless you like dropped out of the college before you finished. So that's
Mm.
like the equivalent of getting jumped out. Like that's the formal way to exit.
So they'll beat you up again so you can get out.
Yeah. They'll beat you up again so you can get out. Yeah.
Wow. You said you moved. Did you go to school there in the suburbs?
I did, yeah. I went to middle school and high school there, yeah.
And you said that majority is white. Were you like the most roughest guy there? No one messes you?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. No, I mean, there's still like, there's always like the group of troublemakers. So naturally I latched onto them, but I think I'm a nice guy at heart. So yeah, I think everyone has a potential to do unthinkable things
Mm.
if you put in that situation. So I think, I'd be down, I'd be down to do it. Like I'd be down to roll and do whatever like the guys wanted me to do. But like my personality wasn't like F you, F that, like
Yeah,
I'm the hardest guy.
you
Yeah, I'm
weren't
not
like
like that.
the rough guy. You just like going with the flow.
I would do what the guys the gang wanted me to do. I would do it. But yeah,
Mm.
yeah. You would, you do what you have to do to fit in, right? So
Yeah.
um to fit in with those guys, it's violence based. We have rivals. We're always looking behind our backs, looking around, just like that was sort of the life we're living. So
Yeah, I know. Like I said, growing up, like my cousins are like that. I'm like, yo, how can you guys live like this? Like you're making your world so small.
yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's still not worth it. But yeah, it's still not worth it. I mean, it's worth it only now for me because I came out unscathed, but there's such a terrible toll. Like all the guys who died, all the guys who are in jail for life, like
Mhm.
it's so not cool.
During those times, what's happening at home? Like, did your parents knew that you were in a gang, and if they do, did they, castigate you?
I don't know if they knew. They never said it outright. I think they knew, but I think they lived in a form of denial.
Mm.
I think like, as immigrant parents, you're just kind of trying to survive at a certain level. So you kind of yeah, they yell at me for certain like where were you? Like why are you home so late? Or why do you smell like alcohol? Or why do you smell like cigarettes? You know what I mean?
Mm.
There's like evident. Why do you shave your head? Why do you look like that? Or why are you wearing those clothes? Like, but they never said oh, you're in a gang, or like I know you're in a gang. They never directly addressed it. It's always these micro issues
Mm.
that I got yelled at or in trouble for. Um, and then that's it. The issue's like resolved there, right? Like, don't if you're don't smoke. Like, that's it. Like, that's the issue right there. Like, you're smoking. That's the issue, right? Never that you're a gang member or something, right?
Mm. I guess as long you're alive and you're fine, they're fine too.
Yeah, I just think there's this level of denial. It's just
Possibly.
too much to handle, I guess, for
Possibly.
for for parents.
Also,
Yeah,
it's a possibility that if they face that monster, it will look back at them and say, "Hey, you're failing your kid. He's not failing you. You're failing him."
yeah, there could be that too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Who knows? It's like, yeah, only now as a parent, like I can start to think back and kind of try to understand my parents now, right? But
Mm.
I had no idea then, what, or I had no care even to even start to try to reflect on what they're
Mm.
going through, right? And how they're trying
Definitely.
to. I think they just tried their best, you know.
That's what they can do. they're trying their best. They're trying to float. You're surviving. They're surviving too.
Yeah.
You know, they can't even save you because they're drowning over there.
Yeah. Exactly.
But did you go to college, even though you get in trouble? How were you? How was your school?
Yeah, I did. So like I said, like the benefit of moving to the suburb is it was a very academically like well distinguished like school district. So so because my friends are so far away, I didn't really have friends down there. So I just made friends in the high school and they're all like doing well in school. So I just kind of did that with them until the weekend, until I can get away and go do what I really wanted to do. But you know, I'm not so I don't know. I think a lot of Asian kids kind of acted that way, kind of almost had a double life in a sense. You know, they still just did well in school and then kind of had their kind of criminal life on the side. But I did it because of proximity. I just couldn't be in LA all the time. So yeah, I guess I was a little bit like a chameleon. Like that was my survival in Torrance in the suburb. Like to survive there, I needed to just blend in with the kids there and just, you know, do well, just, you know, just do whatever they're doing. And then I can go and do my thing.
Would you consider you were just a follower instead of just following your heart kind of situation?
A follower? No, I don't think I was ever a follower. I think it was like I said, survival. It was just like I'm in here for 5 days during the week. I'm here in this like in the suburb with in this high school and everyone's just doing well. So I'll just blend in with them. Plus I had no like real friends. I just kind of jumped around between different groups, like trying to kind of, you know, be relevant, be important, you know, just not be a loser. You know what I mean? So it's I guess if there's no like culture of that where you are, like the gang culture, then if you dish it, like they don't even know how to receive it because they don't even know what it is to understand it. So there's no point in trying to be like a thug in like in like a school where everyone's academically minded and doing well, right? Like doing their extracurricular stuff, going to clubs so they could get into college, like thinking about all that. Like what are they gonna do with this guy who's a thug? You know what I mean? So for me, survival isn't just trying to stand out real hard, is trying to actually blend in as much as possible, right? So yeah.
Which college did you go to?
UC Davis. I went to the furthest college I could go to away from LA.
Why?
Oh, because I don't know, maybe life was tough for me. I don't know. I was ready for adventure. I wanted to. I was really all those movies like growing up in the, you know, uh the 80s and the 70s, like, you know, college was so fun. You know, it has this so American culture, college culture that I wanted to really live out. And I think I was just looking for something new. I know I also got in trouble with my gang. So I actually got court checked. So you're not getting jumped out, but you're just getting jumped for messing up. So I got beat up. And like that really I felt betrayed and like I never even really understood why that happened. I just also, you know, I know what they're capable of doing. So I was a little bit unsure of my relationship with the gang at this point. So I had like a little bit of a escape mind at that point too. Yeah, I don't know. I was always up for adventure. And so I was like, let's go to college, just get out of here and start something new and really like try out this college culture thing.
Did you take art there in college?
I went in, I wasn't very academically minded. So, you know, I barely made it into college, you know, even though, you know, I did decently well in high school and I was able to get into UC Davis. I mean, obviously it's impossible for me to get in now. So the standards are way lower back then. So that was part of why I got in. But
all you have to do is be an Asian.
yeah, that's part of it. Have decent enough GPA, have like, you know, enough extracurricular, and and some clubs in there, and then so I applied as an animal science major, and then I got kicked out because I was very into like the scene, the drinking, partying, and I didn't. College was for the experience, like I said. So I wasn't there to really study that much.
Mm.
Um, and then I changed my major to art at that point to get back into college, get back into Davis over the summer. So I got kicked out in the spring. I took summer school classes and then appealed to the dean. And then I changed my major to art and showed her some of my artwork. And she let me back into the school in the fall as an art major. So, yeah.
But you always wanted art. How come you didn't just go in and start with art?
I didn't care about art that much though, because I was more into like Jeff Rocks and different stuff, I was a teenager at that point. So
Yeah,
I wasn't really, I was still doing it. I mean, it was always part of my life, but it wasn't like something that I was motivated by, so
Then
yeah.
you graduated college. After that, what did
Uh-huh.
you do?
I worked for a pharmaceutical company, and then
Wait, you finished art, but you went to pharmaceutical?
I only did art so I could pass college though. It was also a way for me to survive and get through college because it was easy for me. It
Mm.
wasn't because I was like, again, motivated by it. I barely eked through even with art. It was just natural for me, so I could apply myself very little and still pass. Yeah. So then, I was in the fraternity, and I some of my fraternity brothers were in a working for a pharmaceutical company. So, I applied to that company, and I got the job, and then, it's my first job out of college.
And how was that experience?
It was great. I loved it. Yeah, we were glorified warehouse workers. Everything that goes into processed food goes into drugs because it needs to be edible.
Mm.
And so we had huge containers of like salts and sugars and all that scientific names like the glucoses and the sodiums, and we distribute it to the rest of the company so they can use it for research or to manufacture.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's all FDA regulated, so it's has to be very clean, because it's medical.
And how did you become now you're in art now? What happened there?
Well, it's a long journey. I mean, I did a pharmaceutical company. I was living in San Francisco. I moved to, and then I quit the pharmaceutical company because I broke up with a girlfriend that I thought I was going to marry, and then I don't know, I was having all these inner like turmoil. I
Mm.
was looking at like this homeless guy in the corner. I was like, man, I'm making so much money. I live in like San Francisco, such a like every foreign tourist like dream city to
Mm.
visit, like world class city. Um, and I'm just like squandering it all. I'm just like living a life of comfort. So then this pastor in Oakland, he's like, hey, why don't you come and like do this internship? And so I quit my job and I moved over there, and I did this internship at this church, and then I was just working in the community and working at the like helping out this church for a while, and um then I ended up finally going to grad school
Mm.
way later. So I graduated college in maybe 2003, and I ended up going to my master's program in 2012. So almost 10 years later. And that's when I got really serious about art.
Why did it made you serious this time?
I think it was always brewing. I mean, I always did it in one respect or another. I always like was doing paintings in my room, but I never truly. I mean, part of it could be cultural. Part of it could be like it's embedded in my psyche that there's no future in it, or it's just a hard journey
Mm.
to commit to. I can tell you now, it's still very difficult as an artist. There's a lot of hustle and grit involved.
Mhm.
It's not a very clean path. You're still dependent on so many different people and networks, and like rich people with money, like it's not a it's so hard to do it on your own. But I think, yeah, definitely had like fear of committing to it. And but I always did. I did small shows here and there. I made, I had a studio. So it was definitely an important part of my life, but I think the commitment part I couldn't jump into. And
Mm.
then I don't know, I was doing graffiti in Oakland, like these productions, doing a lot of murals. And I think I was slowly getting pulled into it more and more through different aspects. And then I finally decided I would apply to graduate school.
Mm. You mentioned murals. Let's talk about that mural because
Yeah.
every time I see a mural, I always say, how do you do this? How can you draw a face on a building? Like, how, tell us the process. How do you, from the beginning, from the planning to actually painting or drawing or however you want to call it on the wall of buildings?
So the actual application of the paint on the wall is the shortest part of the process. The longest part is actually the research involved and the time involved in prepping for
Mhm.
everything. Um, so depends on who is asking me to do the mural or who the sort of the partner is, maybe the building owner or maybe a community organization. I'll meet with them. I'll meet with their people who are vested in that party, kind of hear their story, kind of try to understand. Maybe if it's like a homeless housing project, they have a mission.
Mm.
That's part of the homeless housing project. So I want to understand that mission, and I try to get as much information as I can. If it's like a neighborhood group, I'll ask them to put together a meeting with the community, with the people in the neighborhood, and then I'll do all my own research. I'll research the history of that neighborhood. I'll research what's currently happening in that neighborhood. If it's, I'll try to understand the city and everything that's happened in that city. Because I think it's very, for me, like there's a responsibility. It's a very large piece of real estate that's permanently embedded into your community. And so I don't want to leave something that doesn't resonate or reflect back a part of where it lives. So for me, I take so much time doing that research, and then ultimately, I have to find imagery that matches what I've sort of come up with in terms of a subject matter, and then I start to mock it up on my computer,
Mm.
like Photoshop, or like, I mean, I don't know Photoshop. I just use whatever software that I can figure out very easily. And then then there's this whole process going back and forth with whoever is vested. And then the mock-up's approved. And then at that point, the actual application is building a budget, gathering the materials, and then on this mock-up, have you ever done this as a kid or an art class where you put a grid on a photograph and then you have a piece of paper that's twice as big and you put the same grid and you can copy that photograph onto that larger paper?
Mm.
Yeah, anyone can do that. Anyone can do that. I mean, I think what people might have difficulty doing is like if it's a actual photograph with like a black and white photograph and there's like different tones of darker and lighter grays and like whites, and trying to mimic that's where kind of the real artistic skill comes in. But you can outline that exact image onto that larger paper. So that's the same concept. On a wall, I have my mock-up of my grid, and then I do that same grid on the wall, and then I basically outline it onto that wall. And
Wait, how do you do it? How do you mock it up from the paper to the wall?
yeah, so my paper has a grid, right?
Okay.
So it's 4 squares across
Oh,
and 5 squares down. I do the same on the wall, 4 squares across and 5 squares down. Except the
oh
two
shit.
inch the 2 inch square is like 5 feet each, right? So that these
Okay.
2 inch, yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
So
Yeah,
on the wall, you'll make a grid.
yeah,
And then I say, okay, I don't know, like 2B. You have
yeah,
to draw the
exactly. You can number
nose.
and letter it and go 2B, yeah, like Battleship, and then just like go, oh, the corner of 2B is where the corner of the eye goes. So I'll kind of mark out it's a map. It's a map. This thing becomes a map. So you have to figure out where you are on this wall, on this map, and you got to copy, you know, all the little details of that map onto this wall. And once you have it outlined, you have everything you need to
Has it
actually.
ever happened that you mess up, like instead of putting the nose on the 2B, you put it on, I don't know, 4C?
Yeah, all the time. Happens all the time. But I think the more you do it, the more intuitive it becomes. So you're not paying attention so much to the squares. You're just you get a flow because you sort of, people who like trackers, like people like who live in Amazon, they could just take you wherever. They just know it because they don't look at a map. They just know all the markers, right? At that point, it's very similar. Like once you are accustomed to that, you kind of aren't paying attention so much to the markers because you kind of understand like, oh, okay, it's going to go through like three boxes, and then the nostrils right here on the third box on the bottom. So you kind of, yeah, but yeah, you do mess up all the time. So
What kind of paint do you use? Is the usual paint that, I don't know, you paint the house or something?
yeah, I use a lot of house paint. Yeah, but I've started incorporating. A lot of people use like acrylic paint. Nova is a very popular one, and then there's um, golden acrylic paints as well. Uh, they cost a lot more, but they last a lot longer, I guess. So, but the technology with the house paint's so far now from where it was that house paint's, very, very high quality at this point. So, yeah. So I use a mixture of both, a little bit of spray paint sometimes.
How long does a mural last till it start kind of fading?
Yeah, like with the new technology, I don't know. It could be decades. It could be like um 25, 30 years probably. Yeah, it just depends on the quality of the paint you get. And but yeah, the technology is changing all the time. They're always that's the number one issue, right? With like just even painting a house, just like how long can that color last on there, right? So they're always improving that aspect of it, right? So as long as that's happening, that's as long as these murals are gonna last. I used to only guarantee like 15 years, but now I can say, oh, maybe 25 years because the technology is so much better.
What's your most memorable mural for you personally?
Let's see. Well, I think every last one I did's my favorite always because I always want to outdo myself, right? So, every last one is I learned something from the previous one. I figured out a new technique. I challenged myself a little bit more, did something kind of a little bit cooler. It's a little bit bigger, but I might say the Han mural in Oakland. It's a big rooster with like a Chinese character in the back and like, a little circular scene in the corner.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's a lot of people's favorite one, and I think conceptually and just the visually, it works really well. It's fairly simple and really impactful. And yeah, it helped like shift my trajectory a little bit. So,
What do you mean by that?
I think I started doing more birds after I painted that one. Started incorporating more of the Chinese characters and just thinking about sort of things conceptually that way, like applying those elements into my work. So, yeah, it's something that really stuck with me for sure.
Has it ever happened that you will paint a mural on a building and then the owner of the building like, no, you're not allowed to paint anything?
Yeah, all the time, all the time. Or I mean, more before because now it's mostly I'm working with like developers or architects or people who have, full ownership of the situation. So, and I'm not dealing with building owners directly. I almost never deal with building owners directly at this point.
Okay.
And we're working with contracts, so it never gets to that point. But before, Yeah, actually, that rooster one, it was for a mural festival, and so the organizer of that festival are um, are the ones who actually are the communicate with these building owners. And so I had a different wall actually where I planned this whole thing out, and then at the last minute, that owner said, "I don't want anything anymore." So then
Oh.
that whole thing got canceled. So yeah, that's one example of a situation like that. But yeah, it happens frequently. Yeah, especially for things that aren't so formal, like where developers or contractors or architects and contracts are involved, right? Like for a
Mhm.
mural festival, it's a fairly simple agreement. So when you have a simpler agreement, they can just change their mind easily, like break the agreement.
Mhm. How long does it take for you to make a mural, an average size, like the rooster?
That one took like that one was a last minute mural, and I actually had tickets to a concert with my wife for I think an anniversary or something. And I
Bro.
was already living in LA, or we were in LA, or the concert was in LA. So I had to finish it in I had 3 days to finish it. So I finished it in 2.5 days, and I flew back to LA to go to this concert that night.
Good man.
Yeah. So, but on average, I think my murals take about 7 to 10 days.
Mm,
It's because if I'm traveling, I have my kids at home, so it's hard to leave the wife with the kids,
of
especially because they're
course.
still young. So our agreement's 7 days, but she'll give me a little bit extra if it's a extra large mural, or I'll just break it up into different trips. But usually 7 to 10 days. Yeah.
What if it's raining while you're painting? What do you do?
Well, mural making is all about uh figuring things out on the fly and being resourceful. So if it's raining, I still only have 7 days to do it because I already have my plane ticket. On the eighth day, I got to fly home, so I have to still paint. I can't lose that day. So I just buy a tarp and I roll it up on a pole and I make a tent and I still paint in the rain.
Mm,
Yeah, there's no it's still intensive. Like the 7 days is like you're using every ounce of that time.
mhm.
So if you can't lose a day. If you lose a day, it's not going to happen in 7 days. So you have to just work. I think as a muralist, you just start to understand that that's what it is. You have to figure out how to do it through whatever situation, unless it's just like a like a storm, like a hurricane, and you literally can't do it. I mean, some lifts when we go on lifts, there's like a wind limit. So if it's like over a certain miles per hour, you can't go in the lift. So maybe something like that would prevent us from doing it. But if your life is not endangered, then you go and do it.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Do you like make like a platform or everything, anything? But I guess they use lift now,
Yeah, we use mostly lift. It's so much easier using a lift than a platform.
and it's safer too.
It's safer. Yeah, I don't know. Well, platforms are pretty. Yeah, they're sketchy, but they're built so they could be safe. Yeah.
Yeah, but you never know, right? Like you miss a step, down you go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's nice to have the platform move with you, right? Like on a lift.
Exactly. Do you have an assistant?
Yeah, I frequently use assistants, or like if I have like very little time, I'll hire on a muralist, another professional muralist. We have similar values and same skill set and similar visual ability. Like our product looks very similar.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's a guy I typically work with. His name's OU Public Works. His Instagram name is Eric Burke. So if he's available, I'll usually call him. He's a good friend of mine.
Mhm.
Or if he's not, I'll hire it on a different professional muralist.
Okay. There are some people that doesn't really like art, right?
Uh-huh.
And some people would say like, why don't you just put money into community instead making this mural or whatever art?
Yeah. Well, let's see. There's a lot of answers to that. The funding, a lot of times, um, cities force developers to put a percentage of their budget into art. So that money is already dedicated to art in the first
Mm.
place. Um, I think beautifying a city is helpful to the community as well. I think you live and visually everything around you is grimy and not so great. I think your mental health and the situation of it, um, it perpetuates more of that. So I think it's definitely worth it. I think people spend tens of thousands of dollars on billboards, and they're just trying to sell you makeup and tell you look ugly. And I think you know, take that money and put something beautiful that presents something more positive and maybe something a little bit more justice oriented, something a different message. It's essentially a similar thing, a billboard and a mural, but a mural is not trying to sell you anything. It's trying to reflect you back to you in a way that uplifts you in a way. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many, and then I think some critics are just going to be critical.
Hate is gonna hate, as they say.
Yeah, but give them 10 minutes with me. I can maybe change their mind. If they hear the story, if they hear what's behind it, if they hear why it's happening, because it frequently happens actually. When I'm painting it, people like to approach you mostly positive, but there's some critical people. And then, I've had people leave crying because I told them the story of the mural and they're like, they're touched. And they came talking trash, and then so I think if they learn a little bit more, they may change their mind.
Ignorance. That's what it is.
Yeah, there's a level of ignorance, yeah.
Yeah,
But everyone's allowed their opinions, so
of course.
yeah.
Do they get the faces? And how do you feel when that happens?
My murals typically don't get defaced, but they have been defaced, and um depending on the mural, they bother me a little bit more. But in general, I understand that that's part of it, especially like the neighborhoods where the murals are that do get defaced. Like there's a lot of graffiti, there's a lot of activity, like things happening, and it's just part of the situation. So it doesn't typically bother me too much. I mean, I can just go back if I'm around and fix it easily, or ask a friend to help me out or something. So I think, yeah, it sucks for the people in that neighborhood that they had this thing defaced that's in their community. But yeah, I think it in general, personal, it doesn't bother me too much.
Well said. You once wrote that your art stems from the sense of loss or longing. Is that still true to this day?
It is. I think I can never escape that. But yeah, I think a lot of it happens or has to do with being an immigrant child, being a child of immigrants. I feel like a lot of my identity is tied up with this or connected to this country that's like 6,000 miles away. And but I don't know that country very well. I know it through my parents. I know a certain version of it through my parents, my family. But so I think and connected to that are my family members who I felt connected with that aren't any, like my grandfather, who I love so much, but he's not living. He died when I was very young, and I never got to really develop a deeper relationship because I was such a kid. Like just things like that. There's always a sense of loss and longing, like a little bit of regret, like wanting to do something more with that, wanting to connect with this country that's far away. I think I'm very motivated by that. I think my family was very tight when we were younger, but now it's very dispersed. A lot of things, divorce happened, death happens, a lot of disagreements. So, certain people aren't talking to each other. So this thing that felt so nurturing, like I was in the center of this like warm nest of people and like food and love and like culture, it doesn't exist anymore. And I want that. I want that back. And how can I do that now as an artist, right? So yeah, that's where the longing stems from.
Well said, man. Love what you said there. How did fatherhood change you and your art?
fatherhood changed me immensely. I think just like really loving these kids is I don't know. It's hard to describe unless you're a parent, just like uh this desire to do anything for another human being is hard to explain. But um yeah, it's just these moments like you're looking at this creature that's a part of you, and it's like it's moving just looking at something, and like wow, you're in awe. But for my art, let me see, how did I think that there's just a desire to really I really hope that they really see what I'm doing and find meaning in it, find the message that I'm actually trying to share with the public, the world. I hope they can grasp that at some point. They're very young now, so they won't, but at the very least, I hope they have a desire also to like understand their identity through their culture. A lot of my work, I don't know if you mentioned, Snot, is based on, you did earlier, Korean American or Korean culture, and so I hope that inspires them to look deep into their culture. I think, no judgment, but I think it's sad when immigrants come over here and fully assimilate and just forget where they came from ultimately, right? I think you lose a sense of identity, and you won't able to fully understand who you are ultimately without knowing that missing piece. So that's what I hope for. I think that's what I think about all the time as I make my work.
Well said, man. Dude, I think we're there. I want to thank you for this time and your great input and answering all my mural question. Now I understand it more. I really do appreciate it. Before we close out, do you have any last remarks?
No, just I appreciate you reaching out, and I appreciate you taking your time to interview me, and thank you all for listening. And yeah, good luck with everything you do.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you again, David, for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, listeners, for listening. This is Aaron Deliosa for An Immigrant's Life. I'll see you guys later.